Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where OP's sister pretends to be poor. Am I the jerk for calling out my sister for her facade of being poor during Easter dinner? My sister, who's 27, is a medical student, and she always seems to use this as a get-out-of-jail card every time she gets a chance. I, male 24, on the other hand, adopted to go into sales straight out of high school, despite my parents being against it. Over the years, she's asked me for money on several occasions for emergency food and utilities, and since I was working and doing quite well for myself, I always made an effort to help her out. However, last year I re-downloaded Instagram after a long hiatus, and I saw that she had been posting photos in Greece and Cyprus with her friends on various occasions. I didn't want to bother confronting her, but I felt she had been taking advantage of me, so anytime she asked for help after that, I just ignored her. Fast forward to yesterday. The whole family got together for Easter Sunday. We had a lovely meal, and for the most part it was enjoyable. After that, we were hanging out in the garden, and my sister gets asked by my aunt how the studies are going, and she goes on and on about how difficult it is managing finances and how she's struggling. I tell her she's over-exaggerating, and she says, "You wouldn't get it. You didn't go to uni." I told her she should stop taking advantage of the family's kindness and showed her the pictures, and in a pretty stern voice, I asked her, "Isn't this you enjoying your holidays? Oh, you're struggling, right?" Everyone except my brother came to her defense and says that what she posts on her social media is none of my business and that I should stop being a jerk. I enjoyed the rest of the evening, but we're no longer talking, and the rest of the family kept trying to convince me I should make it up to her. Am I the jerk here? Everyone sucks here. You both need to grow up. Your sister should realize how terrible the optics are of both talking down to you because of your post-high school career path and posting about vacations while asking you for financial help. You have to have an honest conversation with her instead of playing games during family dinners. You've made some assumptions here that might easily be cleared up or confirmed by having a chat. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my dad's wife with their baby and saying that I'm not her helper? My dad and I, 17 male, do not have a good relationship. When my mom was sick with cancer, my dad was out cheating on her, and he left me to take care of my younger siblings, who are 12 and 11. He even let me catch him with 2 different women during that time, and my mom was on hospice, so it was really difficult not to say anything, but I was so overwhelmed and scared that saying the wrong thing would take her from us sooner. This was 4 years ago, and I never forgave him for what he put me through. I told him before that I never want to be like him when I grow up, and he's no role model for me. I also called him a failure as a husband and a father. He was upset when I called him that. But when his 3 kids needed him the most, he wasn't there. Instead, he was off cheating on my mom. He also claimed that he loved my mom. I said I found that hard to believe since he was out cheating on her. I was still mostly in charge after my mom passed, but eventually my siblings started to pick up some skills, so I wasn't basically doing it all. It really helped and made us regular siblings again, instead of me almost being the dad. But it was also tough because they're really young and I hated that they were forced to grow up so fast. Losing mom did that anyway. Dad met someone a couple of years ago and he introduced her to us last year, and it took only a few weeks for her to move in. Then suddenly she's pregnant and they raced to get married. My dad's wife tried to involve my siblings and I in her pregnancy excitement, but I wasn't excited and I don't think they were either. I'm pretty sure we all avoided her as much as we could. The baby was born in December, and she had been reaching out to me to help pretty often. But I don't help her. I check in on my siblings where I can, but other than that, I focus on me. I know biologically that this baby is my half-sibling, but I don't care. I don't see them as a sibling, and I'm not planning to bond with them or keep them in my life once I'm in college. I won't speak to Dad either, just my siblings. Recently, Dad's wife has been pressing more for my help. And the other day, she asked me why I could be such a great big brother to my younger siblings, but I've never even held her baby or cooed over her baby. She told me that she sees me do so much for my siblings and knows I was the person who helped them when mom was sick. She told me she figured I would want to be the same for her baby. I told her it wasn't my job to help her and to get her husband to help if she needs it. She told me she wanted her baby to be accepted, and none of us had accepted her baby. None of us had interacted with the baby yet either. She said it's not fair and she needs help. But I told her I'm not her helper and she needs to hire someone if she needs help, or again, get Dad to do it. But I won't be doing anything for her or her baby. She called me disgusting. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If it were me, I would tell her all the details of exactly why you had to be there for your siblings so that she understands why you're not interested in your dad's new family. Not the jerk, but I feel so bad for the babies in these situations. Considering I was in a situation like this where my siblings decided I wasn't sibling enough because they didn't like my mother, she was nothing like your stepmom. She just existed as someone who was in a relationship with my dad. But I can tell you from experience, it's a pain that never goes away and does cause a lot of insecurity. I'm still working through it with how it makes me feel. That said, you shouldn't let your stepmom turn you into a nanny, nor should you let her guilt you into being this kid's parent. Just remember though, it isn't the baby's fault that your dad is a jerk. Am I the jerk for saying my best friend settled for her husband because she was desperate? My best friend Mia and I, both 32 female, have known each other since we were 12, but only became close at university. We're different in many ways, like our views on marriage and having kids. I never want to get married or have kids. Mia has had her wedding planned for a long time and always told everyone she'd be married by 27, travel for a year before having her first kid by the time she turned 30. Mia always tells me I'll change my mind one day. She brings it up often and it's annoying. Backstory. In 2015, Mia reconnected with an old classmate on Facebook, Pete, from our home country, and they started dating long distance. 4 months later, she visited Pete and told everyone they were engaged. I asked her if she was sure, and she said that they were in love and can't wait to be married so she can sponsor him and be together in the same country. I'm ashamed to say my first thought after she told me that was that he was using her to get a green card. Their wedding was planned for summer in 2016, but in early 2016 it was revealed Pete had been cheating with his ex, and she had DM'd Mia pics and screenshots of their text because she found out about the wedding and felt guilty. Mia confronted him and they argued for hours, with him admitting he was using her for a green card and would have divorced her later. In 2018, Mia again reconnected with another classmate, Jay. So Mia, Jay, and Pete all went to primary school together, and Jay and Pete are friends, and Jay knows about what happened. Mia and Jay got married in our home country in late 2019, and I was her maid of honor. The immigration process got delayed because of lockdown, but Mia and Jay were finally reunited in 2021. Months later, she announced she was pregnant and gave birth to their son in February of 2022. Everything was moving super fast, but Mia was happy to be a mom at 30. I recently started a new remote job that gives me a lot of freedom, so I decided I would solo travel. I have a close group of friends, and we do a weekly girls' night. Mia gave birth again in October and hasn't been able to join us, so last week she invited us to her house for dinner. During dinner, a friend asked me about my travel plans. At this point, only this friend knew about them. When the others found out, they were happy for me. Mia was quiet and seemed annoyed. One friend said she was envious of me and wishes she could do the same. Mia scoffed and said that anyone could do it if they were irresponsible. It got quiet and I just stared at her. I asked her what she meant. I said, I'm spending my own money and I'll still be working, so how am I irresponsible? She said I haven't grown up yet and only wanted to have fun when I should be settling down. I told her I don't want to settle down, and just because I'm not married and have kids, it doesn't mean that I'm not a grown-up. She said my life is meaningless, so I said, at least I'm not desperate enough to fly to a different country and marry the first guy I see. I think I'm the jerk for basically throwing the whole Pete thing in her face, knowing how hurt she was. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It's amazing how people are talking about how she's belittled Mia and was needlessly cruel, when Mia literally told OP her entire life is meaningless because she doesn't have a husband or any kids, for the sin of talking about upcoming travel. If that's not needlessly cruel, then I don't know what is. It's clear though, based on this, that you aren't best friends, and it would be weird to continue this friendship. Am I the jerk for telling my brother he's single because he's pathetic and a walking red flag? I'm 32 female. My brother, Carl, who's 27, was spoiled for 8 years because he had almost passed. Basically, he was very sick and spent months at a time in the hospital as a kid, and both my parents and extended family gave him everything he wanted because he wasn't expected to make it past 9. Medical science did save his life, but it took a couple of years for everyone to stop spoiling him. My father admitted it was just a habit, but once he realized the negative impact it had on me and the entitlement of Carl, things changed immediately. My mother is to this day the only holdout. Obviously, Carl hated that he was being told no for anything. Everyone expected him to adjust over time, but he never did. He even told a therapist that he'd never cooperate because he was right and everyone else is wrong. Carl is extremely intelligent, but he's lazy and arrogant. He had to repeat senior year of high school because he refused to do any work. He refused to go to community college because he believed that he knew more than the professors. He refused to get a job until he was 24 because he felt that all jobs short of CEO were beneath him. Whenever my dad tried to do something about this attitude, like taking away my dad's credit card so Carl could no longer just buy takeout every day, my mother immediately undermined my dad. Carl still lives with my dad, and when I visit, we occasionally talk. Last time I visited, Carl complained that every girl he's taken out has ghosted him. I asked for information on the dates, where they went, what they talked about, etc., and he mentioned they get weird as soon as he says that his life plan is to inherit my dad's house and have his wife be a stay-at-home wife while he works. I told him that might be because he's 27 and making minimum wage. His plan is to never actually be an adult. My dad also told him that if he passed, I'd inherit the house because I know how to pay bills. I said I'd have to charge Carl rent if he stayed, or I'd have him move out. Carl said that ruined his life plan because he was supposed to get everything, since I'm getting married and my husband should take care of me. I told him the reason he's getting ghosted is because he's pathetic, a walking red flag, and no woman disrespects themselves enough to be with a loser like him. He started screaming that I'm the jerk. My dad understands that what I said is true, but that I should have been less blunt. My mother keeps calling to demand I apologize for insulting Carl. I do want him to change and grow, so I feel I was wrong in calling him a loser and pathetic. I stand by the red flag part firmly. Am I the jerk? Edit. My parents are separated. Mom lives 150 miles away with her sisters. I live with bipolar disorder, and my father and I have tried getting Carl to just get evaluated or speak to a doctor, but he says he doesn't need to. The only reason my dad hasn't kicked Carl the boot yet is because he did get a job when Dad threatened to kick him out if he didn't. My dad even set up an account for Carl for his savings, the goal being that he saves enough to get an apartment and have a cushion, and Dad has access to it. He will only start charging rent if Carl blows his savings on a non-emergency. People should have been more blunt with old Carl, like years ago, but Carl is set in his ways. Telling him anything is likely futile. Your mama is probably going to push your dad to let Carl inherit the house because her baby boy needs it more than you do, because you sound like a capable adult that can stand on her own 2 feet, so you might want to be prepared for that. Or your parents might want you to take some kind of caretaker role or trust fund manager or something, so that will be fun to get out of, and you definitely should make every effort to get out of it. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for making my son eat all of his food and arguing with his great aunt that disagreed? I, 36 male, adopted my wife's 2 sons, and we have 2 of our own. Our eldest son is 11 and has always had special meals made for him. I propose that we try my family's technique. We put the food out. If they don't want it, they can go and play, but that food gets put away for the next meal. This meal will be there for when they are hungry. My in-laws and wife were opposed to this, so I suggested that he goes to therapy. They diagnosed him with ADHD and ODD, gave him medications. They gave my wife instructions for healthier eating strategies, and she just didn't do any of it. 2 years later, I was fed up as a stay-at-home dad of 4 and battling the food thing. I told my wife I was taking over. After a rough couple months where once a week I'd put a meal that wasn't what he wanted, he's eating whatever is put in front of him. He's having vegetables and feeling proud that he's overcoming the anxiety he has around food. We went to his great-grandparents' house for lunch. I told him he'd need to have a spoonful of everything and as much of whatever he wanted. My wife made him a plate and she served less than a spoonful, but hey, not gonna fight that. After eating most of it, he complained that the salt was burning a cut on his lip, and I told him to finish the last bites. It was a couple of spoonfuls of cheesy potatoes and a tiny piece of ham. I then went outside to check on my other 2 boys. When I came back in, I overheard my son's great aunt bragging to my mother-in-law about how she just ate his food for him. She saw that I overheard, and she shut up real quick. I then pulled my son aside, asked him about it, and he said that she said, "You don't have to eat that." He tried to tell her that he had to, and then she proceeded to eat it anyway. I told him we were going to go back in there, and I'd give him a similar portion, the small amount that he was supposed to eat. Of course, they got huffy, but didn't say anything. When he finished, I sent all of the kids outside. The adults were all talking, so I waited until there was a lull and said, I didn't think I'd have to say this. If you would disagree with how I'm raising my son, you can come to me, but I will not tolerate, looking at my great aunt, you encouraging my son to disobey me. She just outright denied doing it. I told her to shut up, that I heard her bragging about it, and my son told me. It went off the rails. Her daughter yelled at me not to talk to her mother that way. My father-in-law yelled at me for being an atheist. My mother-in-law yelled at me, saying my son's ADHD and ODD are my fault. My wife and her whole family are upset with me, but my son isn't. My wife thinks I should have waited to bring it up, or I shouldn't have said it with my tone. I took time to calm myself. I got the kids out of the house and tried to set this boundary. I don't want any of her family around the kids until they apologize to my son and me. Am I the jerk? Edit. It's been a long day of reading and responding. I'm just gonna leave this here. My son just got out of school, and he had concerns that we were gonna stop with trying new foods because people got upset. I told him I was wrong for my tone, and people were likely upset with that. I told him I feel justified in my anger, but I need to work on responding with less emotion. I touched base with him about our approach, and he's still on board to keep going. I'm taking a lot of the suggestions here seriously, and I'm going to discuss it with his therapist this week. While discussing the events yesterday, he said something along the lines of, "Don't they know I eat 3 new foods now?" I said, "Yeah, buddy. I was hoping they would have been excited that you're eating your first actual family meal with them." We're in agreement that he will continue with our deal, and we're going to incorporate the shopping for produce, cooking, gardening, fishing, and foraging. He said he's not ready to trap small game or hunt. One of his new favorite foods now is smoked wings that I make and my homemade pizza. We're gonna have his friends over next weekend for a sleepover and to try some new good food. I think everyone sucks here. Your great aunt sucks because she encouraged your kid to disobey you, and that can leave a kid confused and feeling like they can turn to the other adult whenever they don't want to listen. But I think you took your son's eating habits too far. You moved the goalpost, and he's not 4 anymore. He's 11. He's old enough to determine what he likes to eat and why, and as long as he's still eating healthy, you should not have this much control over what he eats and how much. You told him to try everything and he did. When he gave you a valid reason for no longer wanting to eat the stuff, you should have let it go. You could have easily went back to saying that the plate will be there when he wants it later, or you could have just let it go completely. He ate most of it, so obviously this wasn't a matter of him being picky. It sounds like you went from wanting him to eat healthy to forcing him to finish food no matter if he actually likes it or has some room for it, and that's not healthy either. You're ruining his relationship with food. Am I wrong? My friend keeps talking about my ex in front of my fiance. I'm 29 male. My best friend Jess, who's 29 female, keeps mentioning my ex in front of my fiance, and I'm thinking of cutting her off. I want to know if I'm overreacting or if Jess is in the wrong. For context, Jess and I went to the same high school and the same college. We were friends in high school. However, since we both went to the same out-of-state college, we became best friends since then. We have always been there for each other during the best and worst times. However, things have always been platonic, and she's more like a big sister to me, who made sure that I stayed on the right track. I've only been in 2 long-term relationships so far. One was with my ex, Lisa, for about 7 years. We met in college and dated all through our college years. Lisa and Jess also became good friends too. After college, Lisa and I just grew apart and we had different goals in life. I became boring after college as I was working on my PhD while doing a full-time job. Lisa broke up with me and she wanted to party on weekends while I was home studying. I was heartbroken, but I don't think I ever blamed her or had resentment towards her, as I understood my decisions were selfish and should not hold her back from having the best life. Jess always stood by me and comforted me during that time. Jess and Lisa were good friends, and Jess always kept on telling me that Lisa loves me and will be back one day when I'm ready. I foolishly held on to that hope and stayed friends with Lisa. That was until I met my fiance, Yang. After I finished my PhD, I got a nice job in a big tech company. Yang joined our team a year after me. We started going out for drinks and dinner, and we started dating seriously pretty soon. We're happy together and financially in a great place. Needless to say, I stopped talking to Lisa after I started dating Yang. I proposed to Yang a year after we started dating and got engaged last year. Jess has been acting weirdly since we got engaged. One of the first things she said to Yang after we got engaged was how I had planned the same thing for Lisa. proposing on a local hiking trail. It was a bit off-putting that she was bringing up Lisa, whom I broke up with almost 5 years ago on such a happy occasion. However, Yang asked me to not spoil my mood as she felt Jess was just commenting on how I had that plan in mind for years. Since then, every time we meet, Jess, without fail, brings up Lisa and how the things I'm doing are all the things that I had planned with Lisa. This happened when we bought a house, planned for vacations, etc. Jess always starts with some nostalgic story and then brings up how Lisa and I were so happy together. She's still good friends with Lisa and keeps giving me updates about Lisa and how great Lisa is doing at work when no one's asking for it. It felt like she was painting a rosy picture of Lisa to Yang and telling Yang that she would always be second to Lisa. Yang told me Jess's comments bothered her, and I also felt the same. I've brought this up with Jess many times and asked her not to do it. However, she says she will try, but since I dated Lisa for 7 years, she would be part of many stories from the past. Also, she asked me why talking about Lisa bothers me and if I still have feelings for her. I've reduced hanging out with Jess. However, she's close with my mom and is always invited to our family parties and holidays. I talked to my mom and sister about this, and they feel I'm overreacting. They feel Jess is just telling stories, and since the stories are mostly from college days and later, Jess will be a character in the story. They also feel I should not be bothered by Jess mentioning Lisa since we broke up a long time ago. I feel that it's disrespectful to Yang, as she doesn't need to hear all about the fun Lisa and I had when we were together, and how we were planning to get married. Do you think I'm in the wrong to stop here, or is Jess truly acting out of line? You need to cut off Jess. You should only have to ask her once to stop this. She doesn't care about you or your fiance's feelings. Her past storytelling sounds like she's claiming her territory that she knew you first, longer, and better than Yang. No one needs a friend who is openly competitive with your future wife. Wild Karen demands to use my wheelchair in the antique store. Cast. We've got me, we've got Nils, an old man, though he doesn't speak, and we've got Harriet, Karen. My husband and I rent a display space in an antique/consignment store for our collective side hustles. I quilt and crochet. My husband sells custom die-cast cars and diorama supplies. Every few weeks we go in and restock our space. This store is very large and can be a bit of a maze, and the store has designated rest stops throughout the aisles. One is across from our space. The store does not provide mobility aids for customers, so it is a bring-your-own policy if you need a walker or a wheelchair. I'm a wheelchair user as I'm paralyzed. My husband and I were at the store restocking the space. My husband had just left to take one of our totes out to the van, leaving me in our space sorting through one of my tote bags. When I hear someone huffing behind me, I don't really pay too much attention to it, thinking that someone might have been taking a break at the rest stop. I was just finishing laying out my sets on the table in our space when the person at the rest stop decided to talk to me. Do you know if the store has wheelchairs for people to use? I look up from my task and I see an elderly couple across from our space. The old man is standing next to the bench looking kind of annoyed, while the woman has flopped on the bench in an I can't take another step kind of way. I honestly was concerned that she might have been having a medical issue as she was rather plump. Are you okay? I ask, about to tell her or her partner to use the phone above the bench to reach the staff desk for help. This store is too big, Harriet exclaims. I can't walk anymore. Me. The store has a chair for medevac use. One of the employees can bring it out to you if you need help leaving. Harriet. But we're not done shopping. Me. I don't think they have wheelchairs to borrow. They've had issues with rowdy kids riding mobility scooters, so they don't provide them anymore. But if you use the phone above you, you can ask a staff member. Just dial 1 and it will connect you to the staff desk. There's a sign next to the phone that states this. Harriet seems to be thinking about her options, so I go on about my work. Nels wanders down the aisle, possibly looking for an escape route. Harriet. What about the wheelchair you're sitting in? Me. This is my personal wheelchair. It doesn't belong to the store. Can I borrow it? What? Surely she's not asking to take my chair to go shopping. Harriet. I want to use the wheelchair. You're young enough that you can stand to walk for a bit. I'll bring it back. Me. Ma'am, I cannot stand at all. I've been a paraplegic since I was 12. This wheelchair is not store issued. It's my personal property and it cost a lot of money. If you call the staff, maybe they can let you use the medical chair, or maybe they know of one someone has in their space that you can buy. but I will not give you my chair and I cannot help you." At this point, I've rolled out of our space. I decided to head towards the vendor door and just leave. Rumor has it, Harriet is still sitting on the bench, waiting for someone to give her a wheelchair. Try to steal my legally rented parking spot? Enjoy getting fired. I'm a professional driver. As such, on the roads in the US, there are different truck stops throughout the country that has a pay-to-park system, usually about 10 to 20% of the lot marked off as reserved, with each space running from $15 to $25. The truck stop where this took place had parking for $17, which is relatively cheap for a guaranteed spot. The spots are reserved for 24 hours, starting at 4 p.m. local time and extending to 3 p.m. the following afternoon. I knew that I would have a late night delivery, so I came to the truck stop around 3:30 and paid for a reserved spot. I told the manager on duty that I had a delivery up the road that night and would be back once delivery was completed, but should still be able to clear out the spot by the next afternoon, today. She told me that this was okay and she would mark the spot as sold when I left. That way, if someone else comes in trying to reserve that spot, she could consult her notes and deny the sale. 11:15 p.m. rolls around. I take off for my delivery. I don't get out of that facility until 2:30 a.m. the next morning, this morning. So I groggily drive back to the truck stop to reclaim my paid-for spot, only to find that the reserved parking spaces are all full. I call the manager on duty and after giving her my info, inform her that all of the spots are full and that someone has parked in a spot and hasn't paid for it. She sends her other employee out to start checking trucks. The culprit was from a company that is known for their bright orange trailers, and he was a company driver. The other employee starts banging on his door to inform him that he's parked illegally and he has to move. Meanwhile, I can see the commotion from my mirror with my vantage point in the fuel island, where I had been instructed to temporarily park. The driver answers the door with a bottle of Heineken in one hand and some sort of smoking implement in another. I know what it is, but for the sake of the mods, I'm not going to say it. I decided to roll down the window to hear the commotion, and I hear the employee tell the driver to either move or he will get the towing company and police involved. This driver is flat out irate that someone had the audacity to tell him where he can and cannot park, so he slams the door on the employee, threatening him. Employee calls the police and the tow company, and the police show up first. I had worked for this company before, so I know their policies, and more importantly, what they can and cannot have in their trucks. Alcoholic beverages are not allowed in the cab. Anything that isn't a cigarette or a cigar in a lighter, also not allowed. The coup de grace, a pew-pew of any kind, absolutely not allowed, and absolutely not loaded. This driver had all of that and some other not-so-legal substances in his cab, so he was hauled away in cuffs. His truck was hauled away on a wrecker. I made a call after the commotion died down to the company safety director and informed them that their rig will be in an impound lot and their driver is going to jail over the not-so-legal stuff he had in his truck. She thanked me and said that he will definitely lose his job, especially over the alcohol and the other not-so-legal stuff. I guess he played the mess around and find out card and it bit him in his career. Am I the jerk for interrupting my son's date so he could pick up his sister? I'm a single father, 43, to 2 kids, Max, who's 17, and Liza, who's 8. I usually have Liza in after-school clubs so that I'm able to pick her up after work. However, last evening I was given some work that had me working overtime. I did try my best to negotiate out of it, but my manager told me that the assignment was to be completed by that night, so I just did it. It was nearing towards 6 p.m., and I knew I wouldn't be able to make it to Liza, so I called Max and asked him to pick her up. He responded by saying that he couldn't because he was on a date with his girlfriend for their 6-month anniversary. I told him that I understood, but that I really needed him to get Liza and that I'd make it up to him for interrupting. He just angrily turned off the phone, and I thought that while he was mad, he had just decided to go pick her up. 30 minutes later, I receive a call from Liza's school on where I was because the school was close to closing down and no one was there. Luckily, one of Liza's friend's mothers said that they'd drop her off and it was all good. However, I don't really like it when Liza goes off with that particular friend, not because of the friend, but because of the mother. She has this habit of asking math questions in the car that she knows Liza is unable to answer and then criticizes her over it. It's all just very mean. I called Max and asked him where he was and told him he was in big trouble when he got home. He just told me that he was busy and to leave him the heck alone. He came home at around 9 p.m. and I told him he was grounded and that he wasn't allowed to use the car for a good 3 weeks. At that, he got all mad and said that it wasn't his fault I was failing as a parent and unable to afford someone to collect Liza. Just want some insight on the situation. Was I being too harsh, and am I the jerk for interrupting his date? Edit. This is the third time I've asked Max to pick up his sister in the span of a year and a half. Some people are asking why I don't have a nanny. Money is tight. Max and Liza's mother are not present in their lives, and no, I do not think of socializing myself with the parents at Liza's school. I'm at work most times, so I haven't found time outside of the yearly parent meetings. Please refrain from insulting my son. Not the jerk. You're not failing as a parent. You had to work overtime, not out drinking or messing around. Your son was in the wrong here for not helping, turning the phone off, and calling you out for it. But you two need to talk about this and discuss expectations. If you expect him to be part of the contingency plan, you need to be crystal clear on that, and what happens to car privileges when he doesn't. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.